I wasn't gonna post this at first because I kept trying to convince myself it wasn't as weird as it felt at the time. But it's been almost a year, and I still think about it way more than I should. So yeah, maybe putting it out here will help. It started pretty normal, actually. I got this new job at a logistics company, nothing fancy, but it was a decent gig. During the 2-week training, we were in a group of 10, and that's when I met Mark. He was friendly, not overly talkative, but chill enough. We partnered up a few times during exercises, and he had this dry sense of humor that I thought was kind of funny. At first, he just seemed like one of those quiet but harmless guys. After training ended, we were placed on different teams, so I didn't really work with him day to day. But out of nowhere, he started showing up at after-work happy hours. I never invited him personally, but I assumed someone else had. The first time, people were like, "Oh hey, Mark," and that was it. But then it became a thing. Every time we went out, he'd just be there. Even when we tried low-key gatherings, like someone's birthday dinner that was supposed to be invite-only, he showed up. No one said anything directly, but it got weird fast. It felt like he was watching for any opportunity to insert himself, like he always knew where we'd be. The weird part was how casual he acted about it, like it was the most normal thing in the world. He never asked if he could come, never said he just happened to be in the area. He'd just show up, sit down, and act like he belonged there. One night, I asked one of the other guys if they had told Mark about the bar we were going to, and they swore they hadn't. That's when I started getting a little paranoid. Like, was he following someone? Me? It sounds dumb, I know. But the vibe was just off. Mark never caused trouble, but the way he latched onto me specifically, always trying to be in my space, it started making me uncomfortable. Things escalated when he invited me on this last-minute weekend trip to a cabin he said his uncle owned. He caught me at the end of a shift on Friday and said he had this great idea to go hiking, clear our heads, drink some beers, just chill. At first, I said no flat out. I told him I had plans, which was a lie, but I didn't feel like spending a weekend in the woods with someone who gave me weird vibes. But then he got weirdly persistent. Said the cabin was already stocked, said he'd drive, said I seemed like I needed a break. It wasn't aggressive exactly, but there was this edge to it, like he was expecting me to say yes. Against my better judgment, I caved. The drive out there was uncomfortable. Not in a dramatic way, just quiet. Too quiet. Mark barely spoke the whole ride, and when he did, it was weird small talk like, "You ever been out this far?" Or, "Bet you sleep like a rock out in nature." The road started getting really isolated after a while. No gas stations, no signal on my phone, no other cars. At one point I asked how much further it was, and he just said, "Almost there," but didn't give any real answer. I started to feel that creeping regret, like when you realize way too late that you've made a bad call. I kept telling myself I was overthinking it. People go to cabins all the time, right? When we finally got there, I knew immediately something was off. The place looked abandoned, like literally. There were leaves piled up on the porch, the windows were dirty, and the lock on the door looked like it hadn't been touched in years. Inside, it was freezing and smelled like dust and old wood. Mark acted like it was all totally normal. He unpacked his stuff, started a fire in the fireplace like he'd done it 100 times. There was no fridge, no running water, just a cooler and a couple cans of food. I asked him if his uncle still used the place, and he just kind of shrugged and said, "Not really." That was the first time I seriously considered asking him to drive me back. I tried to play it cool for the first hour or so. I kept thinking, okay, maybe this really is just a weird, rundown family cabin. Maybe I'm being paranoid. But little things kept stacking up. Like, there was only one bedroom, and he hadn't mentioned that before. The reception was completely dead, no Wi-Fi, no signal. Not even enough to send a text. And the way Mark kept watching me when he thought I wasn't looking. I can't even explain it. Not like he was angry or anything, but almost like he was waiting for something. Like he was studying how I was reacting to everything. That's when I started to get that cold, sinking feeling in my stomach. The kind where your body realizes something's wrong before your brain catches up. I went outside after dinner, just to get some air and maybe think straight. It was pitch black, not even a porch light, just the glow from the fire flickering through the window. I stood there for a few minutes, and when I turned around to go back in, Mark was just standing in the doorway. Not saying anything, just standing there. I tried to laugh it off, said he scared the crap out of me, but he didn't even crack a smile. He just moved aside and let me back in like nothing happened. The rest of the night, he barely spoke. Just sat in this old recliner, staring at the fire, drinking slowly, like he was waiting for something to happen. I didn't sleep much that night. The couch was lumpy as hell, and the whole cabin creaked with every little gust of wind. But it wasn't just that. I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone, even when Mark had gone to bed. I kept hearing faint noises, like slow footsteps on the porch, or maybe in the woods right outside. At one point, I swear I heard something brushing against the outside wall, like fingernails or branches dragging across it. I sat up, straining to listen, but the silence afterward made it worse. It was so quiet that my own breathing felt loud. I thought about grabbing the keys and trying to drive back, but I realized I never saw where Mark put them. Around 3 a.m., I finally dozed off for maybe an hour. When I woke up, the fire was out, and the cabin was pitch black. I fumbled around for my phone, but of course the battery had died. That's when I noticed Mark wasn't in the bedroom anymore. The door was wide open, and the bed looked untouched. I called out for him, quietly at first, then louder. Nothing. That awful, skin-prickling silence just hung in the air. I walked through the cabin with a lighter I found, calling his name, trying not to freak out. Then I noticed the back door, which I didn't even know existed, was open. Wide open. Cold air pouring in. I stood there for what felt like forever, just staring at that door, not knowing if I should shut it or run through it. I stepped outside with the lighter still in my hand, but the flame kept flickering from the wind. I couldn't see much, just trees and more trees. No sign of Mark, no sounds, no footprints I could follow. It was like he had just vanished. I called his name again, but my voice felt small and useless out there. The worst part was how quiet everything was. No bugs, no wind in the branches, not even the sound of animals. Just complete stillness, like the whole forest was holding its breath. I started to feel like maybe this wasn't just about Mark disappearing. Maybe I wasn't supposed to be there at all. I couldn't explain it, but I felt watched. Not in a metaphorical way. I literally felt someone or something watching me. I went back inside and locked every door I could find. I grabbed the biggest knife from the kitchen drawer, which was this rusty thing that looked more decorative than useful, and sat on the couch waiting for the sun to come up. I kept thinking about all the little things I ignored. How Mark always seemed to show up without being invited. How he never really talked about his personal life. How no one at work actually knew much about him. I started wondering if this uncle even existed, if this cabin was ever meant to be a hangout. The way he set everything up, it felt deliberate. Like the whole weekend was planned down to the last detail. And now he was gone. Just gone. The sun eventually came up, and I was still there, tired, freezing, and freaked out of my mind. I waited another hour before I worked up the nerve to open the front door and check outside again. Mark's car was still there, keys gone, and no sign of him anywhere. No tracks, no note, nothing. I waited until about 10 a.m., then finally decided to try the trunk. To my surprise, it was unlocked. Inside were some hiking supplies, a second cooler, and my wallet. I didn't even realize it was missing until that moment. He had taken it from my bag at some point. I felt sick. That's when I knew, whatever this weekend was supposed to be, it was never about relaxing or hiking. It was about control. I ended up walking down the road for over an hour before I got a signal and called a friend to come get me. I didn't tell them the full story, just said the trip went weird and I needed a ride back. I called Mark's number a few times after that weekend. It went straight to voicemail, then stopped working altogether. He never showed back up at work. HR said he resigned unexpectedly. No one ever followed up, and honestly, I didn't push it. I still don't know what that weekend was about, or what would have happened if I'd fallen asleep harder, or stayed another night. But I can't shake the feeling that it wasn't random. He planned that trip to get me alone. And to this day, I still don't know why. I'm not usually the type to post stuff like this, but after what happened that weekend by the lake, I feel like I have to talk about it somewhere. Maybe someone out there has gone through something similar. Last summer, me and two of my closest friends, Danny and Leo, rented an Airbnb by this lake in the middle of nowhere. It was one of those cabins with a huge wooden deck facing the water, surrounded by trees and no neighbors for what felt like miles. We were just looking to unplug, drink a little, relax, and enjoy the silence. The first day was perfect. We got there in the afternoon, grilled some food, had music playing, and stayed up late talking under the stars. It was sometime past midnight when it started. Leo had just gone inside to grab another beer, and me and Danny were sitting on the deck, staring out at the lake. There was no wind, no noise, just pitch black water and the sound of crickets. That's when Danny nudged me and said, "Do you see that?" At first I thought it was a log or something floating, but then I realized it wasn't floating at all. It was a man, just standing in the water, not moving, maybe 20 feet out. The water barely reached his waist. He was facing us, but we couldn't see his face, just a silhouette. He didn't flinch, didn't say anything, just stood there like he'd been waiting. We stared at him for what felt like a full minute, frozen. I remember whispering Leo's name, not wanting to take my eyes off the guy. When Leo came back out, holding his beer, he laughed at us at first, thought we were messing with him. But then he saw it too. None of us said anything for a few seconds. I thought maybe it was someone from another house just screwing around, but there were no other houses. Danny called out like, "Hey, you okay?" But the man didn't move, didn't respond. That's when I noticed something that made my stomach drop. The water around him was completely still. No ripples, like he wasn't even in it. Just standing there. We ended up backing into the cabin, locking the door behind us. I don't even know why we felt scared. He wasn't doing anything, but it felt wrong. Like something deep in your brain telling you to get the hell away. We watched through the window for a while, but he was gone. Just like that. I wish that had been the end of it, but the night had barely started. Around 3 a.m., I woke up to what sounded like footsteps on the porch. Slow, deliberate, like heavy boots on the wood. I laid there frozen, listening. Then the footsteps stopped right outside my window. I didn't even want to look. I just laid there, eyes wide open, heart pounding so loud I thought it would wake the others. In the morning, we all looked like crap. No one had really slept. I asked Danny and Leo if they'd heard the footsteps too, and they both said yes. Leo even swore he heard the porch door creak open at some point, but when he got up to check, nothing was there. We tried to brush it off, blame it on nerves, maybe even some animal. Still, the whole cabin felt weird after that, like something was watching us. We stayed mostly inside that day, barely even talked about what we saw the night before. It wasn't until that evening that things got even weirder. I went to the bathroom and noticed something that made my skin crawl. There were wet footprints on the floor. Human footprints, leading from the hallway to the kitchen. The front door was locked, all the windows shut. I called the others, and we just stood there staring at the prints. No one had been outside, no one was wet, and they didn't look old, they looked fresh. You could literally see the individual toes. None of us said anything for a while. We were all trying to make sense of it, pretending it was somehow explainable. But deep down, I think all three of us knew something was really off. That night, we pushed furniture in front of the doors, like that would help. I couldn't even relax enough to sit down. I just kept pacing around the cabin, checking windows, listening. And at some point, maybe around midnight, we all heard it, the sound of water dripping. But it wasn't coming from the kitchen or bathroom. It was coming from the living room. We walked slowly into the living room, and the sound got louder, drip, drip, drip. It was coming from behind the couch, like someone had come in soaking wet, and just stood there. Danny turned on the floor lamp, and that's when we saw it. A small puddle of water right in the middle of the wooden floor. No trail, no prints this time. Just a single dark puddle. And above it, nothing. No leak, no ceiling damage, no reason for that water to be there. That was it for us. Leo didn't even wait. He started grabbing our stuff and throwing it into bags. I don't even think we said a word to each other. We just packed, got in the car, and left. Middle of the night, no plan, just pure panic. We drove straight back to the city. I remember constantly looking in the rearview mirror, expecting to see someone, or something, following us on the empty road. But nothing happened. We didn't really talk on the drive, just sat there in silence, trying to process what the hell had happened. When I finally got home, I took the longest shower of my life, and tried to convince myself that it was over. Just some weird freak thing, a nightmare maybe. But then, that same night, I heard water. I live in an apartment on the 3rd floor. No leaks, no broken pipes. But around 2 a.m., I woke up to the sound of dripping, right outside my bedroom door. At first I thought maybe it was coming from the bathroom. Maybe I didn't turn the faucet off properly or something. I got up, half asleep, opened the door, and there was nothing. The bathroom was bone dry. But I swear to you, the sound kept going. It wasn't coming from inside the apartment anymore. It was like it had moved. I walked out to the hallway, and it stopped. Just like that. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. The next morning, I messaged Danny and Leo. I didn't want to sound crazy, so I just asked if they'd heard anything weird. Danny answered first. Dripping. That's all she said. Then Leo sent a voice note. He didn't even try to hide how freaked out he was. He'd heard water too. And footsteps. For the next couple of days, things got worse. I started hearing footsteps in my own apartment, slow, heavy ones, just like on the porch. They'd stop when I turned on the lights, and they always seemed to be just one room away. I'd find random wet spots on the floor near the door, or even inside my bedroom. I even started smelling this faint scent of lake water, like algae and damp wood. It got to a point where I stopped sleeping altogether. I tried to convince myself it was stress or sleep deprivation, but how do you explain the wet footprints I found on the rug in my living room? I live alone. No one else has keys. It was always the same pattern, barefoot, human, and always facing inward. Eventually, it just stopped. No warning. One night I was wide awake, staring at my bedroom door expecting to hear the dripping or the footsteps, but there was nothing. The silence was so loud it actually made me feel more paranoid. The next night, same thing. Then a week went by. No wet spots. No noises. I kept waiting for something, anything, but it was like whatever it was had just left. I talked to Danny and Leo again, and they both said the same thing. It had stopped for them too. No one wanted to dig too deep into it. It was like we all silently agreed not to question it. We didn't want to bring it back. Even now, months later, I still think about it. Sometimes I'll wake up in the middle of the night and just listen, waiting to hear that slow, steady dripping. I don't know what we saw that night in the lake. I don't know how it followed us or why. I just know it felt real. Too real. I haven't been near a lake since. Can't even look at pictures of them without feeling sick. It's like a part of me is still waiting, still bracing for that sound on the porch, for that puddle in the middle of the floor. And the worst part, I don't think it ever really left. I think it's just quiet, watching, waiting. I never thought I'd be one of those people posting something like this online, but I need to get it off my chest. This happened to me and my friend Nate about 3 weeks ago, and I haven't really slept right since. It was a Friday night, and we were bored, so we decided to drive up to this scenic overlook about 40 minutes out of town. It's this quiet spot up on a ridge, looking out over the valley and the distant city lights. We'd been there a few times before, bring a couple drinks, hang out, talk. Nothing crazy. When we got there around 10 p.m., the place was completely empty. We parked facing the edge, killed the engine, and just sat there with the windows cracked, music playing low. We were probably sitting there for about 15 or 20 minutes when we noticed a car coming slowly up the road behind us. At first, it didn't seem like a big deal, but then it pulled in right behind our car and just stopped there, with its high beams blasting directly at us. We couldn't see a thing past the glare. We figured maybe the driver just hadn't noticed we were there, or was trying to turn around. But then they didn't move. They just stayed there with the lights burning into our back window. And then, after maybe 30 seconds, all the lights suddenly went out. Total darkness. That was the moment everything shifted. The silence felt heavy, like something was watching. We both looked at each other without saying a word, but I could tell we were both thinking the same thing. Something was seriously wrong. Then the headlights came back on, just the low beams this time, but the car was inching closer, like barely rolling forward. Nate reached over and locked the doors without saying anything. We were both staring into the mirror, trying to see who was inside, but the windshield was too dark to make out anything. The car stopped again, maybe 5 feet behind us. Then it flashed its brights once. Then again. Then off. Then on. It started doing this weird, almost rhythmic pattern. High beams, off, low beams, off, high beams again. Like it was trying to signal something, or mess with us. It didn't feel random. It felt deliberate. I remember my mouth going dry, and I told Nate, "We need to get the hell out of here." He fired up the engine, and we backed up at an angle to get around the car. The second we started to move, the other car gunned forward and blocked the exit. No hesitation. Just cut us off completely. At that point, panic hit me like a wave. We couldn't go forward, and the overlook only had one way in or out. Nate threw it into reverse and sped backward down the road, tires kicking up gravel. The other car waited a second, then turned its lights off again. And I mean everything, headlights, taillights, even the dash lights. Just darkness. Then it started following us with no lights on at all. That's when I started really losing it. We were speeding down this pitch-black road in the middle of nowhere, and something, or someone, was behind us, staying perfectly on our tail without making a sound. We took a sharp turn onto a smaller road that looped through the woods, hoping to lose them, but the second we made the turn, their headlights came back on, full beams, and they were right there behind us again. No hesitation, no space between us. It was like they knew the road better than we did. We were going way too fast for that kind of terrain, bouncing in our seats, tires screeching around every curve. I kept looking back, expecting them to crash or slow down, but they didn't. They stayed locked on us like they were just toying with us. At one point, we hit a dip in the road and nearly lost control, but Nate kept it steady. I couldn't stop shaking. I kept saying, "This isn't normal, this isn't normal," over and over like a mantra. Eventually, we hit a fork in the road that I recognized. One path led toward the highway, and the other into a dead-end campground. Nate swerved onto the highway entrance, and somehow, finally, we saw the headlights behind us stop. The car didn't follow. It just stopped in the middle of the road and shut its lights off again. We kept going, didn't look back. Drove straight into town without saying a word. When we finally pulled into a gas station, I got out and nearly puked. My legs wouldn't stop shaking. Nate kept pacing, saying we should call the cops, but what were we even going to say? A car flashed its lights and chased us? It felt too surreal, like no one would believe us. After we calmed down a bit, we sat in the car at the gas station and decided to search online, just to see if anything similar had happened to anyone else. We didn't expect much, honestly. But when we searched car flashing lights overlooked Chase, we started finding stuff. Old forum threads, Reddit posts, local blogs, all describing something almost identical. People parked at that same overlook, a car showing up with strange headlight patterns, then chasing them aggressively down dark back roads. One post even mentioned the lights turning off during the chase. Some of the stories dated back years, and no one ever got a good look at the driver. A lot of the posts ended the same way, people saying they barely got away and never went back. That's when it really hit us that this wasn't some random psycho having fun. It was something ongoing. Like whoever was doing this had done it before. Over and over. Maybe still does it. We debated reporting it, but every story we read said the cops didn't do anything. No license plate, no damage, no names. And honestly, we didn't want to talk about it anymore. We just wanted to forget. But I can't. Every time I drive at night now and see headlights behind me, I get this wave of panic. I can't tell what's normal anymore. That night changed something in me. It's like a part of me is always bracing for that moment again, when the lights go out and I know they're coming. What keeps me up the most is how quiet the whole thing was. No horn, no yelling, no engine revving, just those lights, playing with us like we were part of some sick routine. I keep thinking about the way they shut everything off and still followed us, pitch black, like they didn't need lights at all. Like they'd done it so many times they had every turn memorized. And the way they just stopped when we hit the highway, it was like we left the boundary of their hunting ground or something. That's the part that messes with me the most, how fast it ended. No confrontation, no explanation, just gone. And now we're left with this feeling that it could happen again anytime, anywhere. We haven't gone back to that overlook. I don't think we ever will. And if you're reading this and you live anywhere near that area, don't go either. I know how crazy this all sounds, and I wouldn't believe it if I hadn't lived through it myself. But I swear on everything, someone out there is doing this, and they've been doing it a long time. No one knows why. No one's ever seen their face. All I know is we got lucky. And there's probably someone else out there right now, parked at that same spot, thinking they're just gonna have a chill night with a friend, until the lights show up. I booked the Airbnb for a weekend getaway, just to clear my head and enjoy some quiet time. It was a duplex house on the outskirts of a small town, nothing fancy but cozy enough. The host was friendly during check-in and casually mentioned that the unit next door was empty. I remember thinking it was nice to have the place to myself. The first night was uneventful. I cooked a quick dinner, watched a movie, and went to bed early. The house creaked a little, but that's normal for older places. Still, I locked every door and window before sleeping. I'm not the paranoid type, but I like to be cautious. The second night was when things got weird. I woke up around 3 a.m. because I felt cold. I swear I had locked the bedroom door, but now it was slightly ajar. My heart sank as I sat up, trying to remember if I'd forgotten to latch it properly. That's when I noticed muddy footprints on the hallway floor. At first, I thought it might be dirt I'd tracked in earlier, but the prints were wet, and they definitely weren't from my shoes. They were bigger, heavier, like someone wearing boots. I froze for a moment, my mind racing with explanations that didn't make sense. I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight, my hands trembling as I stepped into the hallway. The footprints trailed from the front door to the bathroom, and then stopped abruptly. The weirdest part? There were no prints leading back to the door or anywhere else. It was like whoever made them had just vanished. I checked the front door, and it was still locked. The windows? Shut tight. There wasn't a single sign of forced entry. By this point, my pulse was racing. I told myself maybe it was a prank, or maybe the host had come by for some reason and didn't tell me. It was a stretch, but it was the only thing that made any sense. I spent the next hour pacing the living room, too scared to go back to sleep. Every little sound, the house creaking, the wind outside, made me jump. Finally, I convinced myself to lie down, but I left the bedroom light on and kept the phone in my hand. The next morning, I decided to check the whole place in daylight, hoping it would make me feel less freaked out. That's when I noticed something else. My suitcase was open. I hadn't touched it since I arrived, but now my clothes were neatly folded inside, completely different from the messy way I usually pack. My stomach dropped as I stared at the suitcase. I'm not the kind of person who folds clothes like that, and I certainly hadn't done it here. It felt wrong, like someone had been trying to erase their presence, but left a small, eerie calling card instead. I checked my wallet and phone, but nothing was missing. Still, the thought of someone rifling through my belongings made my skin crawl. I sent a message to the host, asking if anyone else had access to the unit or if they'd been inside for any reason. Their response came quickly. No one else has access. The unit is completely private. Are you okay? That was the final straw for me. I decided I couldn't stay another night. I started packing my things, but as I zipped up my bag, I noticed the footprints were gone. The hallway floor was clean, like it had just been mopped. I hadn't touched it since I saw the prints, so either I was losing my mind, or someone had come back to cover their tracks. My hands were shaking as I grabbed my stuff and headed for the door. I glanced at the unit next door, the one the host said was empty. The curtains in the living room were drawn, but I swear I saw them twitch, just for a second, like someone was standing there watching me leave. I practically ran to my car, tossing my bag into the back seat and locking the doors as soon as I got inside. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. I sat there for a minute, trying to calm down, convincing myself I'd overreacted. Maybe the host was just careless with their information. Maybe the footprints were from a cleaner or maintenance worker who forgot to tell me they'd been there. But no matter how I spun it in my head, I couldn't explain the suitcase, the disappearing footprints, or the open door. As I started the engine, I glanced at the house one last time. That's when I saw it, a shadow in the upstairs window of the supposedly empty unit. It was just a flicker, like someone stepping back from the window as I looked up. My stomach turned. I didn't wait to see more. I pulled out of the driveway and didn't stop driving until I was miles away. I texted the host again, telling them I'd left early and that I thought someone was in the other unit. They responded a little while later, apologizing profusely and promising to check it out, but I never heard anything else after that. Even after I left, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I stopped at a gas station to grab a coffee and clear my head, but I couldn't relax. The memory of the muddy footprints and the shadow in the window kept playing in my mind, over and over. I checked my phone for reviews of the Airbnb, wondering if anyone else had experienced something similar, but there was nothing unusual. Just glowing reviews about how quiet and peaceful the place was. It made me feel even worse, like I'd been singled out for whatever happened that night. When I got home, I unpacked my bag and tried to forget about it. But as I pulled out my clothes, something else caught my eye, a small slip of paper folded into one of my shirts. I don't know how I missed it earlier. My hands were shaking as I opened it. The message was written in blocky, uneven handwriting. I saw you. That was it. No explanation, no name, nothing else. I've never been so terrified in my life. I still don't know how it got there or who left it, but I haven't stayed in an Airbnb since.